The vibes are good in Columbus right now with their sixth straight win. They continue to be the hottest team in the NHL right now. Let's talk about that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. So I want to talk about the game last night. A lot of fun. They almost blew it in the third period, but they didn't, which is important. And I want to talk a little bit about tomorrow night's game against the Rangers as well, because that's a big one coming up. So let's talk about last night's game, and then we'll talk about tomorrow's game. That feels like a good way to do things. Blue Jackets win their sixth game in a row. Their 22nd game of the season. They are 22-17-6. They occupy the first wildcard spot. And don't look now, they are only 5 points behind the third place Carolina Hurricanes, who are going through not necessarily a rough patch right now, but they're 5-3-2 in their last 10 versus the Blue Jackets 8-2-0. So objects in your mirror may be closer than they appear, and the object in the mirror is the Blue Jackets. So that game. The thing is, it's easy to look at that game and go, oh, well, obviously it's the Sharks. Yes, the Sharks didn't put up a particularly big fight in the first two periods. The second period especially was real bad for the Sharks. They got outshot 12-2 in the second period. Showed a little bit of pushback in the third. They ruined Elvis Merzlikins' shutout bid with about 13 minutes left in the game-ish. Tyler Toffoli scores his 17th of the season, and from there it gets a little bit tense, if I'm being honest with you. But Blue Jackets lock it down. James Van Riemsdyk with 2 goals. Kent Johnson with a goal and an assist. Again, another great night from Elvis, who I believe that's back-to-back good games from Elvis. So we might be due a not great game from Elvis, just because that seems to be the pattern that we're on at the minute. He had 3 bad games, and he's the second of 2 good games right now. So we played against Seattle, made 29 saves on 31 shots, and then 18 saves on 19 shots against the Sharks last night. So 2 good games from him. We'll probably do a third one, and then we'll restart the cycle there. But lots to like in this game. Zach Werenski continues to be Zach Werenski. Adam Fantilli, who I want to talk about in a little bit of detail in a minute here, making a really good case to just be the permanent 1C on this team, regardless of when Sean Monahan comes back. He, I believe, has 3 goals in 3 games since taking that spot on the top line. He's got, I believe, a 7-game point streak going now, where he's got 8 points in those 7 games, or a 6-game point streak with 7 points in that span. Let me just double check. So actually, Adam Fantilli has registered a point in every single game this year. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 8 points in his last 7 games. 4 goals and 4 assists in that time. Continuing to kill it. He's also a +7 in that time as well. And I believe the Blue Jackets are 6-1 in that time. Yeah, because the January 2nd was the last minute loss to Detroit. So killing it, continuing to be great. Really, really leaning into his role as that number 1 center at the minute. Sounds like Sean Monahan is still going to be at least a week away, maybe more than that. But the good news is they don't have to rush him back, and that was kind of a topic of conversation when when the injury first happened was, well, what happens to this team without Sean Monahan? Because he'd been such a big part of the team. He's been their 1C. He's kind of been the heart and soul of the team this season. He's been arguably their MVP. You can make a case for Zach Werenski, you can make a case for Sean Monahan. What's going to happen if he's out of the lineup for any length of time? And turns out the answer is they're just going to put Adam Fantilli there, and he's going to be just as good as Sean Monahan. So it's going to create a really difficult question, I think, when Monahan does return, because do you take Fantilli away from the line mates that he's really succeeding with right now? Do you continue to, see how far you can go with this, or do you go back to, the line that has worked for you for large parts of the season? It's hard to imagine separating Monahan and Marchenko at this point. I don't think those two have played. I think they played maybe 2 games on different lines when they're both in the lineup. So that's going to be a really interesting decision to make when Monahan comes back. But I know he goes out to injury in the Penguins game. Adam Fantilli jumps up to that first line in that game, does really well. Can he sustain that? The answer, it sure seems like he can. I think he's got some jump in his step. I tweeted about this, I think, about 5 minutes before he scored last night, because my timing is, as always, perfect. That he had his skating boots on last night. He looks like a different player in the last handful of games. And it's truly incredible what happens when you give a player line mates that they can work with, and that's no disrespect to, which I understand is something that people say when they're about to say something really disrespectful, but no disrespect to James Van Riemsdyk, Zach Aston-Reese, Kevin Labanc, great bottom 6 veteran guys. They are not who you should be playing Adam Fantilli with. He needs real wingers. He needs people that he can work with, and that was you're seeing now he's playing with guys that can keep up with him, and I think a lot of his quote-unquote struggles at the beginning of the season was he would be in the right place, he would be doing the right things, and then, he needs someone to be in the right place for him to pass the puck to. So he was creating a ton of offense and none of it was going in the net because there was no one there to finish those passes, or he was, breaking into the zone and he would be the only one in there, and, he can't. Sometimes he can do it all by himself, but not all the time, So you're seeing him play with line mates that are more to his speed, and that's really, really key. So it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be an interesting debate. I think Sean Monahan probably does go back onto that line with Voronkov and Marchenko, but I'm hoping that Chinikov will be back soon, and then potentially put him and Johnson on Fantilli's wings, and that top 6 that's a great top 6. So we'll see where we go from there. I also wouldn't hate if they keep Luca Del Balbaluz around and put him on the wing at some point. I think he's been pretty good since his call up. Really great energy guy. Feels like he's going to be really annoying with the right line mates. So maybe that's an option there as well. I want to take a quick break, and then I want to talk about the third period, because we've talked about all of the things I liked in the game, which is basically everything. Let's talk about the third period, which got a little bit dicey. It's coming up in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It's $300 to keep the action going. The app is super easy to navigate. The variety of bets keeps every game exciting. And when you win, you get paid instantly. So there's no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just go find the heaviest favorite you can, put $5 on it, and if it comes through, you're going to get $300 that you can spend on whatever you want. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. I want to talk about the third period, because it wasn't the best third period I've ever seen from them. It worked out okay, and I think had it been against a team with a slightly less anemic offense, it wouldn't have worked out quite so good. But the Blue Jackets worked really, really hard for 2 periods. Like the shots were 27. Can I do math on the fly? The shots were 25-8 at the end of the second period. They'd more than doubled up on the shot count against the Sharks. Like the third period is where you want to really stick the dagger in. I think this is one of those things that like sometimes you're like, oh yeah, this is a young team. You're 3-0 up. You're like, okay, maybe we can, not coast necessarily, but maybe we just step off the gas a little bit. And that was when the Sharks really started to, if you get the Sharks were a really again, the Sharks are a young team, the Sharks are a struggling team, but if you give them an inch, they're going to take at least 2 inches. They're maybe not going to take the whole mile, but they're going to take something. And they took a goal. That line of Tyler Toffoli, Macklin Celebrini, and William Eklund, which was buzzing all night, was far and away the best line for the Sharks last night. Get rewarded with a goal. Tyler Toffoli's 17th of the season. Macklin Celebrini gets the assist on that. And frankly, they were lucky it didn't get worse than that. I thought Elvis had a really strong third period after, especially after that goal. Like I said, they pushed and pushed and pushed. And then the goalie Paul, the Blue Jackets did not do their usual kind of like comedy of errors thing of like failing to score an empty net goal right until the last second. James Van Riemsdyk is like, you know what, let's just finish this off. But the third period does concern me because, like I said, if they do that against like basically any other team in the league that's not like the Sharks or the Preds or the Blackhawks, I do think that it probably would have burned them. I think this time last year, this team loses this game, or at least blows the lead, and it goes to overtime. And that's like worrying a little bit. Hopefully, I think that goal kind of put a little bit of the fear of God into them, and they did start trying a little bit kind of after that, but they've got the Rangers coming up next, which I'm going to talk about in a second here. They can't keep pushing for 2 periods and then like that last period, just kind of sitting back and hoping for the best. Again, we saw a bunch of that last season as well, and that was all of those like collapses. So like I'm thinking specifically of like the Bruins game. There was a Bruins game last season. They were up 2-0, and then Brad Marchand scores twice in the third period to take it to overtime, and then completes the hat trick in overtime. Against the Maple Leafs, they had a game as well where they were up 5-0 after the second period, and I was like, man, I have a bad feeling about this game. Sure enough, Blue Jackets win it in overtime, but the Maple Leafs do score 5 goals in that period to take a point out of it. Like, so we're seeing like the like growth from that of, okay, well, this time last year they would have fully blown this game, and this time they didn't, but they did kind of make it not difficult on themselves, but certainly not as easy as they should have been. The Sharks had more shots in the third period than they had in the first two combined. They had 8 shots combined in the first and second period, and then 11 in the third period. Now, they only outshot the Blue Jackets 11-9 in the third period, but it's still not like my favorite third period that I have ever watched. But on the whole, a pretty good game. These are the games that you want to win. These are the games that you should be winning. These are the games that, like, I think if you lose a game like this, then you have to have a conversation. Alexander Georgiev was good, but not like as good as Vitek Vanacek was the first time these two teams faced off against each other. So it's it could have been worse, in my opinion. I'm not gonna sit here and say like, oh, they need to do better than this win, because like a win's a win. It's 2 points. You don't have to face the Sharks again this year. Like Adam Fantilli's point streak keeps going. Zach Werenski's home point streak keeps going. Great game from Elvis. Great to see James Van Riemsdyk get a couple of goals. Like Zach Werenski, I believe, now it sits alone at the top of the defenseman scoring board. He's got 51 points. Kyle McCarr only has 50 points. He was held pointless in his game last night against the Oilers. And they're on a 6-game winning streak. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, they need to do this, this, and this better. But the third period does concern me, and I don't think they're going to be able to do the same thing in their next game, which is against the New York Rangers. So that's going to be interesting. The Blue Jackets haven't faced the Rangers yet, so you don't really have any idea how this team is going to perform against them. I feel like this team typically, I feel like, doesn't perform super great against the Rangers. It's on the road, which Blue Jackets have struggled this season on the road, although they've picked it up in the past couple of weeks or so. I believe the last 2 road games are both wins. But they're going on the road now for at least a couple of games. They're playing the Rangers and then the Islanders. And then I think they're on the road in Toronto and Detroit as well. Don't quote me on that. But this is the first of 4 games against the Rangers. This is not like, it's not as big of a game as the Flyers one was a couple days ago. Because the Rangers are slightly lower in the standings. So they are 4 points away, or 5 points, away from the Blue Jackets right now. They would have to jump the Flyers, the Red Wings, the Canadiens, the Senators, and the Bruins. They are 5-3-2 in their last 10 games. They've kind of picked themselves up a little bit from where they started to dramatically fall apart. They imploded, like, what was it, just before Christmas, I feel like. They've kind of picked themselves back up a little bit after that. But they, like I said, they've got 5 wins in their last 10. They're coming off the back of a win against Utah, a overtime loss to Colorado, wins against Vegas and New Jersey, an overtime loss against Dallas, and a win against Chicago. So, like, a 6-game point streak they're on right now. They've got like 10 of them. They've had 10 of the last 12 points available to them, and they've dropped points to Colorado and Dallas, which, like, is fair enough, really. Those are both very good teams. Their goaltending is not as good as people want it to be, I don't think, but is certainly doing just fine. Igor Shesterkin with a 907 and a 2.97 goals against average, 1 shutout. Jonathan Quick, at the age of a billion, has a 900 save percentage and is 6-5-1 on the season. So, like, the goaltending is doing just fine. They're struggling basically in all aspects but the penalty kill in terms of creating offense. They're 22nd on the power play, 7th on the penalty kill. They are 19th in goals for per game and 20th in goals against per game. Blue Jackets have jumped up to 29th in goals against per game, by the way. They were 31st before this game, but again, solid performance by Elvis, by the defense, has jumped them up a couple of spots. Hopefully they can keep on climbing. Let's take a quick break before I get too deep into the Rangers. But in a minute, we'll talk about who to look out for on the Rangers, and it's going to be old friend Artemi Panarin that we're going to talk mostly about there, I think. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked on Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked on Blue Jackets. We're talking about the Rangers and how the Blue Jackets have to be careful with this team. Again, I feel like historically the Rangers have come out on top in this matchup. Maybe that's just recency bias for me, but it's going to be an interesting matchup, I think. Again, I really have no idea what to make of the Rangers this season. They started off really, really hot, and then have since, like, they were at the top of their division for a long while and have since kind of tumbled all the way to, I think they're 6th in the Metro at the minute. They are only 4 points out of a playoff spot because the Eastern wildcard race is insane right now. But they've got issues with Chris Kreider, who's not putting up the points because Zibanejad is not putting up the points. They traded their captain. They traded Capo Caco. Like, basically everyone is underperforming. Like, So they have Arturo Panarin is their leading point scorer. We'll talk about him in a second. He's got 47 points in 42 games this season, which is about where I would expect Panarin to be. Second place is Adam Fox with 34 points. So he is a full 13 points behind. And then behind him is Trocheck with 29. So, like, something's going on there in the... It's really just Panarin and friends at the minute. And I don't really understand, like, what happened here. I don't understand what caused the implosion to happen. Again, like, this was a team that was, I think they went like 14-4 in their first 18 games of the season or something stupid like that, and since then have dropped to 21-20-3. Like, that's still it's not a great record. It's above NHL 500, but it's a weird one. I don't understand the Rangers, and that's what, like, worries me a little bit, because going into Madison Square Garden is always tough, especially for the Blue Jackets. I feel like Elvis specifically never performed super well at MSG, but, like, Sergei Bobrovsky also never performed super well at MSG, so maybe it was, like, not a specific goalie thing, maybe it was a Blue Jackets thing, you know? I don't know what this game is gonna bring. Like, the Blue Jackets could... It could be 6-1 Blue Jackets, it could be 6-1 Rangers, and I don't think I would be surprised by, like, either of those outcomes, honestly. Like, obviously, the Blue Jackets winning 6-1 would be amazing. I would love that. I also wouldn't be surprised if they lose 6-1, though. In terms of players to watch, like I already said, Artemi Panarin, 7 points in his last 5 games, 47 points on the season, which is good for most on his team by a long way. It will be good for third in scoring on the Blue Jackets. Only Werenski and Marchenko have more points than Panarin. So it is going to be like battle of the elite Russian wingers tomorrow night. So it'll be Panarin versus Marchenko. Who's gonna win out there? It's going to be battle of the American defensemen in Adam Fox and Zach Werenski. And my guess is it will be battle of either the Russian goalie versus Russian goalie, or Russian goalie versus the Russian-speaking goalie, because Elvis is not Russian, he's Latvian, but he is fluent in Russian as well, so he does get lumped in with the Russian gang quite a lot, and also Alexander Texier, who doesn't speak Russian, but is part of an honorary part of that gang, or he was before he got traded to St. Louis. Anyway, so it should be interesting in terms of, like, guys to watch, players to match up against each other. Blue Jackets have a 7-game win streak on the line here. They can close the gap between them and Carolina. In terms of Carolina and their opponents, they're playing Vegas tonight, and then I don't believe they're playing tomorrow. No, they're inactive tomorrow. So they're playing tonight. They've played the same number of games as the Blue Jackets. So they've both played 45 games. So Carolina Hurricanes losing to Vegas, the Blue Jackets winning against the Rangers will cut that gap to 3 points. It's real tight in there, guys. It's getting real close. Again, around the league scoreboard watching, the Senators lost in overtime last night, so they got a point. Montreal won. Detroit lost. Philadelphia won. Oh, sorry. Montreal won. Detroit won. Philadelphia won. The Islanders lost, which dropped them kind of mostly out of contention. The Penguins play tonight, I think, or no, the Penguins play oh no, the Penguins do play tonight. My mistake. They're playing Buffalo, so again, it'll be, if they win, that'll bring them right back up into the mix. So just a quick rundown of the standings from the wild card down. Blue Jackets are in wild card 1 with 50 points. Bruins are in wild card 2 with 49, and then it's the Senators with 48, the Canadiens with 48, the Red Wings with 46, the Flyers with 46, the Rangers with 45, the Penguins with 44, the Islanders with 41, and the Sabres with 39. Now, the gap between the Sabres and this second wildcard spot is growing, so my guess is that they're probably easing their way out of the running. Islanders as well. They're 4-6 in their last 10 games. So it looks to me like it's probably going to turn into a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 team race. depending on what the Rangers and the Penguins do. Penguins are 5 points out right now, and that feels like 5 points doesn't feel insurmountable. 6 or 7 points is starting to feel a little bit like, can you make up that ground, especially if every other team is gonna keep winning. So we'll keep an eye on it. It should be fun. Like I said, this is a big game for the Blue Jackets in that it's a Metro team and they have a chance to increase their lead on the other wildcard teams. So this will put them, a win will put them 4 points above the Senators, who are currently on the outside, the top team on the outside looking in. I'll put them 6 points above the Flyers. The Blue Jackets are in 4th place in the Metro right now. The Flyers are in 5th. And if the Rangers get 2 points, that'll bump them up to 37, which will 47, which will put them within 3 points of the Blue Jackets spot in 4th. So it's not as big of a game against than it was like against the Flyers earlier this week, where basically whoever won got to keep their spot in the wild card, but it's still a fairly big game, and it feels like the Blue Jackets have. Well, they've still got all 4 games against the Rangers to play. They've still got all 3 games against the Senators to play. They've got 1 game against the Flyers. They're done with Montreal. I believe they're done with Boston as well. So they've got 2 games against the Red Wings. 1 game against the Penguins, I think. So those games could get really, really interesting. I believe they have a Rangers game like right at the end of the season as well. Which, again, they played the Senators 3 times in the last 2 weeks of the season, which is going to be really interesting. Okay, the last game against the Rangers is March 15th, so about a month before the season finishes, but that could be a really spicy game as well. Predictions, which I didn't do before I got distracted by looking at the standings. I'm gonna say 4-3 Blue Jackets win, and I'm gonna go with, you know what? I'm gonna go with an Adam Fantilli goal. Kid's red hot at the minute, is really, really enjoying his time on that top line. I'm going to say that he keeps the streak going, and the Blue Jackets win in Madison Square Garden. That's my big guess. No episode tomorrow because it's Saturday. I'll be back on Monday with a brand new episode. We'll break down the game against the Rangers. We'll look forward to the game against the Islanders, and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jacket. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. And until tomorrow, or until Monday, make sure you stay locked on.